I really don't know what's going on with Flip. I don't know what's happening with Drew either. I'm not sure if there have been multiple conversations behind the scenes, but Flip has been noticeably more reserved lately on the recent pods. Now, while Mona has been catching a lot of heat for allegedly talking too much, I actually think it makes sense for Flip to dial it back a bit. It creates a very clear contrast between the two of them and shows that he can take direction and actually listen. At the same time, though, we can't keep getting mad at Mona for speaking her mind. And before I even go too far down that path, I'll say this. I do think she's been doing a lot better. But we can't criticize Mona for constantly voicing her opinions on every topic that comes up when, 1, she's literally on a podcast, that's what she's paid to do. 2, a lot of people don't say what they actually feel, so she's going to get frustrated regardless because these are fake. And 3, what exactly is she supposed to do? Did y'all bring her on just to be eye candy, sit in the background, and not say a word? Now, on the flip side, Flip was catching a ton of backlash for how he used to act, how braggadocious he was, how loud, how over-the-top and rambunctious he stayed. So him dialing it back actually works in his favor, given how he was previously perceived. That shift helps him. But anywho, I actually want to focus more on what they were talking about, rather than what's allegedly going on with them, because honestly, I didn't see any tension today. Today's episode was really solid. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm agreeing with Ice. Are we still doing Potter of the Month? Because I really feel like Ice deserves at least one vote from me, or honestly, he might deserve to win this month. Joe was saying it's either Ish or Ice, and Ice has been doing really well lately. I don't know if it's because I started feeling bad for him and noticed they've eased up on the jokes, but I've definitely been paying more attention to his contributions. I am 100% aligned with him on the Kanye topic. I really am. I'm not saying this latest apology wasn't sincere. I actually read through it and thought, okay, Kanye, and I'm a fan of Kanye, so it's not like I was angry with him, but I'm also not just going to fall back in line automatically. Ice is right. You've done this too many times for it to be coincidence or impulse. This is a pattern. This is habitual behavior. And it doesn't help that you have products to sell on your website. Now, like Park said, I don't have an issue with people getting their money, especially when you're in the spotlight. That's what you're supposed to do. But if this is part of a repeated cycle where you mess up, apologize, and then try to sell something, and now you're finally taking accountability for offending all races and all religions, then I need to see consistency. I need to see this as an ongoing change. Obviously, I haven't seen Kanye in the news as much lately, so I can't pinpoint exactly when this shift started. But I also can't sit here and say I disagree with Ice. Two things can be true at the same time. I can accept your apology right now for the reasons I stated, because this is the first time it actually feels genuine, and I can also agree with Ice that until I see sustained behavioral change, I'm going to assume you're just repeating the cycle. Sell something, apologize, make amends, get the bag, then disappear back into the abyss. Now, I don't think I want to tolerate that anymore. Now, on the other topic, I don't usually talk about Jim Jones, and I'm not about to start dragging him now, but I was reading the Patreon comments today, and this is the first time in a long while where the majority of the comments were focused on the topic itself rather than the people discussing it, aka the cast. All I kept seeing was Jim Jones this, Jim Jones that, and most of those comments were saying they had never heard of the Jim Jones version of that song. I'm going to be honest, I remember when that song came out because I was actually listening to the radio back in 08, 09, and I remember hearing the Jim Jones version, and this was me being in Texas, San Antonio, and Houston, so two major markets. Jim Jones was definitely getting radio play. Now, if I'm Kid Cudi, I'm not letting anybody say they made me, especially if I already had deals lined up. Especially if I had already linked with Kanye early on, and especially if I already had his cosign. Let's not rewrite history. We Fly High, No Lie, you know this, came out in 06. Jim Jones had motion, he had buzz. But what I don't like is how Joe and the crew are leaning into revisionist history, talking like Jim Jones always had massive pull or constant leverage. Jim Jones didn't start getting the level of recognition he has now until much later. Let's be clear about that. Jim Jones was always viewed as a sidekick, but I'm not about to sit here and pretend like he wasn't hot during that era. He absolutely had his moment. He did records with 6-4, he had Ballin', he had remix after remix. I remember very clearly having a whole folder full of Jim Jones instrumentals from that time period because I graduated in '06. So '06, '07, '08, '09, that era is burned into my memory in terms of what I was listening to. That was fresh, no question about it. But I'm still with Ice on this one. It wasn't getting played like that to the point where y'all should be giving this dude that level of credit. And this is coming from someone who fully agrees that it was getting spins down here in the South. You just can't rewrite it that way. I remember the Kid Cudi version, and a lot of people were pointing out that it was on NBA Live. That was a huge game at the time, and they didn't have the Jim Jones freestyle on there. And that's another thing, the fact that they're calling it a freestyle. When I heard it on the radio, I would have never connected those dots. You could have just said you were a featured verse. You could have said you were there to help push and amplify the record. Because if y'all remember, the same exact thing happened with Akon and Styles P. Styles P never came out saying he made Akon, but Locked Up with Styles P's verse was a major push for Akon. So when it comes to ints like that, you really have to think about it. You have to remember, like they always say, I was outside during that time. I was there. I remember how it actually went.
Now, the biggest thing I really wanted to talk about, Joe, you are wild for this, but I see the play. I definitely see the play. Joe started talking about why hip-hop isn't speaking on the ICE situation and the most recent, I don't even want to call it an assassination, but depending on how this gets used politically, it might turn into that. And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the name, but Alex Preety, he was killed at the hands of ICE agents or officers. They brought that up, and Joe asked, why isn't hip-hop speaking on this? The move I see Joe making here is this. A, if hip-hop does start speaking on it, he gets to be the catalyst. Or B, he's baiting one of these hip-hop tards into starting beef with him just to prove he's still a top dog in the media space when it comes to his voice and influence. This feels like Joe setting up a premeditated viral moment. I'm constructing this. If you react, I win. If you acknowledge it, I win. If you take the advice I gave, I win. All the while, it conveniently takes the microscope off of him. Because according to him, and honestly according to a lot of us in the urban media space, when it comes to media voices, he's number one. And they talk about this topic a lot. Shout out to Mark for always trying to segue into topics like this. But notice, they always give the safe, vanilla response. Of course, you express empathy when something happens on American soil, but notice how they didn't say anything specifically about ICE. They avoided that completely. And every single time Mark brings up Obama and how this was happening during the Obama administration, suddenly nobody has anything to say. Then Ish brings it up, and now everyone is suddenly in agreement. So I understand the point you're trying to make. Me personally, I can't say I fully agree with the idea that everyone has to speak on it or that people don't know what to say. Because when they asked Anthony Edwards, who plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, what do you think about what's happening here in your city? His response was, I don't know. I don't have enough information. And yeah, that answer sounds a little shaky. It's a very tricky space to be in when you have that big of a platform, because people expect you to comment on things you genuinely may not have enough knowledge about. Because I vividly remember what happened when LeBron spoke on what was going on in China. Everybody was like, hey, shut the F up. This doesn't concern you. Don't talk about what's happening over here. To the point where the NBA had to come out and say, hey, he didn't mean that. LeBron apologized, said he misspoke, and it damn near got Daryl Morey fired. When it comes to political context and regional issues, you have to be extremely mindful of who you're speaking to and what you're speaking on. So, Joe, I see the play. I get it. It is important. But salute to y'all for today's episode. It was damn near a great pod. I didn't really have any issues with it. Y'all let me know what you thought about today's episode. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the page if you haven't already. And if you have, then you already know how we rockin'. And listen, I recorded an emotional, rant-based episode yesterday. I didn't release it because I came to my senses and said, nah, this is too harsh. This is coming from pure emotion. But I'm not usually the type to hold back good content. It was still a strong rant.